Next question, asked by Juan Williams, first answered by Ambassador Alan Keyes.
Ambassador Keyes, I think you're familiar with the fact that America has a tradition of black military heroes going from Crispus Attucks in the Revolutionary War to the Tuskegee Airmen in World War II to General Colin Powell. And tonight, Tavis, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge one of those heroes who's here with us in the audience. We have with us Bernice Armour. She's the first African-American combat pilot in U.S. history. I should say first female African-American combat pilot, and she served 2 tours of duty with distinction in Iraq. Today, we see a decline in black and Latino enlistment because of one reason, the war in Iraq. What do you say to the third of the nation that's minority and overwhelmingly opposed to the continuation of this war, even as the GOP in Congress continues to block attempts to set a deadline to end this war?
I think the most important thing to remember is that our efforts in Iraq and elsewhere right now that followed in the wake of September 11th aren't an effort to defend black people, white people, Jewish people, Christian people, etc. They're an effort to defend the United States of America from a deep and terrible threat that came against us in disregard of the fundamental principle, the fundamental moral principle that is supposed to govern all international affairs, all wars that are conducted by countries, and that is that you do not consciously target innocent human life. My father was a soldier, fought in Korea and Vietnam and World War II, did not stand in defense of this race or that, but stood in defense of the common principles of moral decency and justice that are derived from that premise I talked about, that our rights come from God. I don't think it's hard to ask anybody in this country to stand in defense of those principles. My one criticism, I think unfortunately President G.W. Bush put a lot of emphasis on democracy for people in Iraq when our real goal is security for people in America.
Thank you, Ambassador. Governor Huckabee.
One of the tragedies is that our military veterans have kept their promises to us. We have not kept all of our promises to them. Many of them have come back to be told to wait in line for their health care, to be told that mental health would be something that might be rationed out. That's unacceptable. And if I were president, I'd like to see us have a very plainly written, simple to understand Veterans Bill of Rights that would make sure that every single thing that these veterans have been promised is delivered, and is delivered as the first fruits of the federal treasury before anyone else gets their nose in the trough. The veterans get their benefits paid not on the basis of a limited budget, but on the basis of making sure that we keep promises to the people who have kept us free. That, I believe, will help people want to be a part of a military.
Thank you, Governor. Congressman Paul.
The most important promise we keep is the oath to obey the Constitution. We just shouldn't be going to all these wars. We shouldn't have so many injured in our hospitals, because we shouldn't go to war unless it's declared. If it's declared, we should go win it and get it over with. Now we're in this war for 5 years or so, and nobody sees the end to this. So we went in under false pretense. There were no weapons of mass destruction. There are still people who believe that Iraq had something to do with 9/11, yet 15 of the people were from Saudi Arabia. We need to live up to our principles so there are less injured veterans, but when they come home, we better jolly well take care of them, and we're not doing a very good job right now because all the money's going overseas. We're broke, and we got to do something about it. And we can't perpetuate a welfare state and police an empire without going bankrupt, and we're nearly on the verge of that.
Thank you, sir. Senator Brownback.
One, I think it's clear what we need to do at this point in time, and I think we need to talk about at this point in time where we are. We declared war. We voted in Congress to go to war, Republican and Democrats. People can say things weren't right. We shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that. We are where we are today. The military, I believe, has done and is doing a superb job. We have had a terrible political answer on the ground in Iraq. A terrible. Yesterday, in the Congress, a bipartisan political solution passed. It was the Biden-Brownback bill, or since I'm here, it was the Brownback-Biden bill. It declares a three-state federalized solution to Iraq, a Kurdish north, a Sunni west, a Shia south, with Baghdad as the federal city. Weak federated government. Most of the policies devolve down to the local units of government because Iraq is less a country than it is three groups of people. We need to recognize that, and we can move forward with that political solution and pull our guys back.
Thank you, sir. Congressman Tancredo.
What's the constitutional responsibility of the Congress when it comes to war? It is 1, declare it, 2, fund it, or 3, not fund it. That's it. You know what? When you talk about, Juan, you talk about the number of bills that we have killed because attempts to sort of end this thing. Well, every one of them has inside of them all these provisions about how we have to fight the war, how many people can be dispatched at any particular point in time, and who they can fight. I will tell you this, that the founders of this country knew very well that what would happen to us if we ended up with 535 generals in the Congress of the United States, and that is you lose wars. You need a commander-in-chief, and then the Congress has every right, and you know what? It is every right to be involved in it. It has every right to talk about this and to condemn it if you don't agree with it. But you know what? It ends up with this. If you don't want it, don't fund it, but you cannot micromanage it from the Congress of the United States.
Congressman Hunter.
Thank you, Tavis. Bernice, thank you for your 2 tours in Iraq. And I want to say I've got a son who's done 2 tours as a Marine in Iraq. He's getting to see new country in Afghanistan right now. And who knows, you may be there shortly. Thanks for your service to our country. Ladies and gentlemen, we can leave Iraq, and under my leadership, we will leave Iraq in victory. And let me tell you what I would propose. The key to handing off the security apparatus in Iraq, now that we've stood up a free government, and it is a free government, it's stumbling along, it's inept, but it's a free government. The key to a security handoff is to have a reliable Iraqi army. Right now we got 131 battalions in the Iraqi army. We've trained them, we've equipped them, and we are moving them into the battle. And my recommendation to the President, the Joint Chiefs, and General Petraeus is to make sure that every one of those 131 battalions gets at least a 3 or 4 month combat tour in a contentious area. When they are battle hardened, we can rotate them into the battle zone, rotate out America's heavy forces, Marines and Army, and bring them home. That's the right way to leave Iraq in victory.
Congressman Hunter, thank you. We've covered a lot of ground tonight. We're starting to get a little tight on time now, just a few minutes left in this conversation. I'd like to then use moderator's prerogative and privilege to ask you now if we can squeeze a couple more questions in to cut your answers down to 30 seconds. See if we can't get a couple more questions in right quick. Cynthia Tucker will ask next, answered first, 30 seconds, by Governor Huckabee.
Governor, does the U.S. have a role to play in ending the genocide in Darfur, and if so, what should that role be?
I think we have some role to play in it, but I guess what disturbs me even more, we've not even addressed the genocide that's going on and the infanticide in our own country with the slaughter of millions of unborn children. And we also have extraordinary poverty in this country. Yes, we ought to be involved, but you know something? There are a lot of people in America that think the only poverty is in Darfur. I don't understand. There's poverty in the Delta. There are people who don't have running water, people that don't have access to medical care and don't have a decent school to go to, and you don't have to go halfway around the world to find it. We've got it right here in this country.
Congressman Paul.
The U.S. government has no authority. There's no constitutional authority. There's no moral authority. There's plenty of moral authority and responsibility for individuals to participate. But every time we get involved, no matter where, for good intentions, believe me, we're getting involved in a civil war. Even when you send food, it ends up in the hands of the military, and they use it as weapons. So it's not well intended. We should direct our attention only to national security and not get involved for these feel-good reasons of going overseas for the various reasons. And this is the main reason why I think that we ought to just come home from every place in the world and bring our troops home from Iraq.
Senator Brownback.
I know this won't be a crowd pleaser, but I couldn't disagree more with that last answer. We are the greatest nation on the face of the earth. And we are ones that can stand up, and we need to stand up in the face of a second genocide when we declared years ago in Rwanda, never again. And what is happening? It is happening again. And it's not just the first genocide that's taken place in Sudan. It's the second, and I've been there. We need to do divestiture campaigns here. We need to support the African Union troops there. We shouldn't put our own troops. We don't need to put our own troops. We need to provide food and medicine as well.
Senator, thank you very much. Congressman Tancredo.
First trip I ever took, the very first trip I ever took as a congressman of the United States was to Sudan. I came back, worked 2 years to pass the Sudan Peace Act. I believe we do have a moral responsibility to act. It is not to send troops. Believe me, I do not believe we need boots on the ground in Sudan or in Darfur to deal with this issue. But you know what we could do? We could see whether the United Nations is worth its salt and force them into participating in this issue and getting that solved.
Congressman, thank you. Congressman Hunter.
Yeah. The outside troops, UN and African Union, are not getting the job done because they're garrisoned far away from the villages. They get hammered by the Janjaweed. By the time the damage has been done, the troops always get there late. What we probably need to do is get a humanitarian corridor driven up through that vast country where we have armed convoys, UN convoys or African Union convoys, to get food and medicine to those people that need it most. And lastly, teach those villages self-defense, because the troops aren't getting there in time.
Ambassador Keys.
I have to say I'm appalled by the suggestion that we retreat into some kind of Fortress America and forget who we are. We are a nation of nations, a people of many peoples. We are in touch with every people on the face of the earth. If somebody's being hurt somewhere in the world, somebody in America grieves for them. And I don't believe we can turn our backs on that universal significance, that universal mission. I think a lot of the suggestions made here in terms of how we get involved are good ones. We don't have to send troops, but we need to support and reinforce the sense of local, regional responsibility for both humanitarian and military order in that region.
Thank you, sir.